In this lesson, we're going to take a closer look at operators. And for this, I want to hook up my second button. And I'm actually not going to do it exactly the same way as I did my first one. I'm going to use the function within here, because I always like to illustrate that there are different ways to do this. And again, depending on how you write your code out, you probably don't want to have both ways within one source code, but this is just to illustrate that there are multiple ways in order to write these things out. So first thing that I want to do is I want to do that same thing where I've get the current values for A from num A and num B. So now I've got those current values all ready to go, and I can make some arithmetic there. So we're looking at A plus plus and then maybe B minus minus. Maybe what I want to do is have them update within the fields themselves as I click them. So that's going to take a little bit of breaking apart of these values here. So I'm going to just simply, what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate these out, because I'm going to need a little bit of both of those. So I'm going to set variable A, get element by ID, get rid of the value, so that I can also set the value if I wanted to. So we just get that entire element object, that num A and num B, and then here I can parse that out, A value, and parse this out, B value, and of course I should set some other values here, so AABB, and just over here AABB. So now what I want to do is set the value of A. So now we're going to set value of A to AA and value of B to BB. And let's just see what's going to happen here. So do you think that this is going to work? What do you think is going to happen when I click button 2? So let's refresh it and check this out. So we see that now we're updating the values within the fields. So A is increasing by 1, B is decreasing by 1. And when we open up our browser here, we had these arithmetic operators. So we had an increment, a decrement. These are the arithmetic operators. We can also pull back a remainder as well. We can also set it as a negative. We can set it as a positive. Let's take remainder, and we'll do something with the remainder. So open up our browser, and maybe what we want to do is, if we've got some alternating rows, so I'm going to create a quick list here, so an unordered list, and I'm going to have a bunch of list items. So what if I actually wanted to have these alternating in color? So I'm actually not going to update any of those contents in order to save some of the time. So it'll just be a bunch of list items, 1, 1, 1, 1, all the way down. So what if I want to alternate those background colors? Maybe whenever we press the button, I want to add some additional functionality here. So instead of just updating those, I want to update the background colors of those, but I want to alternate them. So let's get this unordered list. I'll give it an ID so we can select it. So just call it my list. And then over here, we'll get element by ID. And we'll select out that my list. And maybe just give it a variable of my list. So now we've got that object, the myList object. We've got it in with the list. And then, of course, we need to create a list. So my items. And here we can do the myList object. And we can do get elements by tag name. So this will give us a list of all the nodes that are going to be list items. So we just do an li there. And I'll console log this out for the moment so we can take a better look at what we have available and what we're working with. Let's go back and list this out, inspect. Of course, I got to list this out as my items. So we see that we get all of those list items there. So now all we have to do is loop through them and set the background colors of them. And we can do that. So this is where we can add in that remainder. So we can take a look and we can see if the value has a remainder, and if we know that a value divided by 2, so if it has a remainder, then it's going to be odd, and if it doesn't have a remainder, it's going to be even. So let's loop through all of the variables. So I'm going to set variable I equals 0 because we do want to start at 0, I, while I is less than my items, the length of the my items. And here we're going to do an increment of I. So I know we've done this before, and this is just to illustrate that these operators are all over the place within JavaScript, within a lot of the functionality as well. So now we're going to list through all of the my items. So my items and I. And this is where we can set that background color. And we can equal that to, so maybe we just do red. Let's see how this turns out. So let's close this one up, refresh it, and click the button. I just realized I forgot to add in style, so let's add in style, go back out and refresh it, and now when we click, we see that they all go background color red. So we actually have to make a check to see if our operator, and we're going to divide I by 2, and we're going to see if it's one value, and if it is, then we're going to apply something, and if it's another, if it's even, then we're going to give it a color of red, and if it's odd, then we're not going to give it a color of red. So let's do that check. So we'll do if so we're dividing I by 2, and if I is going to, if there's any value, so if there's anything other than 0, then we're going to get red applied to it, and if we get a remainder, then we're not going to apply anything to it. So let's just see what happens now. So we see that 0 doesn't get anything applied. The odd number 1 gets red applied, 2 gets nothing, 3 gets red, 4 gets nothing, and 5 gets red. So we can also do a division by 3 and show you what happens there. So now we see that because we have 0 doesn't have a remainder because it's divisible by 3 is 0. 3 divided by 3 is also 0, so no remainder. But these ones now have remainders, so that's why they're turning out red. And that's how you can use operators in order to do some calculations and apply some functionality. So you could do something like this, alternating them, odd and even, and so on. So in the next lesson, we're going to look at even more functionality you can do with operators within your JavaScript. So that's coming up in the next lesson.